everybody. Welcome to the Glow podcast. I am here with a very exciting guest. I have Randy, and we are going to talk about some really fun things involving healthcare today. But for those of you just joining us, we are Tailored Marketing, and we help healthcare, wellness, and longevity clinics expand their business through strategic marketing strategies. So if you are interested, drop a comment below. Randy, thank you so much for coming on today. I'm super excited to talk to you. If you would, I would love if you would just kind of go ahead and give a little bit of an introduction so the listeners know who you are.
Sure. Hey, everybody. My name is Randy Berholtz. I live in San Diego, and I am a life sciences venture capitalist with Mesa Verde Partners. We're a fourth-time venture fund based in San Diego. I was previously the CEO of a company called Rancho Santa Fe Bio. It was a clinical stage cardiovascular company that we sold last year. And I've got the entrepreneurial bug, so I've started a couple other companies that I'm currently working on funding on right now. Very happy to be here and happy to share my experience with you.
Yeah, no, that's super awesome. And so I know that you have a very diverse background within your career. And so what kind of led you to life sciences and venture investing as well?
Sure. So I didn't wake up one day and say, "Hey, this is what I want to be." It's sort of a gradual process. I'll be honest. I wanted to be president of the United States, and when that didn't happen, I thought the way to become president was to go to law school. I first studied political economy, as an undergraduate, because in America, we get to study what we want, undergraduate. Then I went to law school, and then after law school, I won a scholarship. I was a Rhodes Scholar. I won a scholarship to go to Oxford. I brought back a wife, and I went back again. I brought back a baby. It was our baby. But I started off at big law in New York City. I'm originally from Pennsylvania, from Northeast Pennsylvania, so I went back to Pennsylvania for a couple of years, and then about 30 years ago, I was in Pennsylvania with my wife and my two little girls, and we said, where do we want to go in the world? And we said, let's go to San Diego. So we came out here. I start working in the life science industry, and if you think about it, what is the life science industry? We're really focusing on products and services that help improve health and life. And so what happened was I got cancer early in life. In my early 30s, I got cancer. And then when my second baby was born, my second baby had all types of health issues. And so unfortunately, we are all consumers of this industry, called life sciences and healthcare and the like. And so unfortunately, I saw at an early age, the need for life-saving technologies and that. And so I got out here in San Diego. I worked for a life sciences law firm, and I said, law firm life isn't for me. I want to go in-house. So I spent about 25 years in-house as an executive with various types of life science companies. I got involved on the venture side in 1998. A friend of mine had a venture fund, and I said, wow, that'd be great to be a venture capitalist. So I sort of did that on the side with him, and I sort of do that on the side right now. I've invested in probably over 30 companies, life science companies throughout the world. Had some pretty good returns so far. Had a lot of exits. I've invested in everything from HIV to oncology to medical devices to pain devices to consumer health and that. And I can honestly say, I'm very proud of the men and women in the life science industry, who go in, and who take the time and the effort to find treatments and cures for a lot of things that ail us, and that cause us to have problems in life. So I thought to myself, what do I want to do with my life? And I couldn't think of a better industry that both, it can have monetary rewards, and at the same time, it can play a very big role in healthcare.
Yeah, no, definitely. I completely agree with you. And you brought up such a good point too, that it really affects all of us. We're all going to be patients at one time, or also just life sciences in general. It's just our bodies and how they function and how we optimize all of that functionality. And so, yeah, I think that's such a good point. It really is. It involves everybody. Everybody should be interested in this.
Well, that's right. And look, the problem is with health, as you said, we go through different, I say we age similarly. Men and women age a little bit differently in that, but our goal is the same. Our goal is to have as long of a life we can where we're healthy.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. No, and I think that that's even just like a big trend, and I'm sure you've seen obviously the life sciences and healthcare space evolve over time since you've been involved in it. But one of the biggest things people are talking about now too is longevity, and how do we age better and how do we live longer, but not only live longer, but live a really good life for 90, 100 years, however old we live to. And so I guess, how have you kind of seen life sciences and healthcare evolve over the time that you've been in the industry?
Sure. So before I got into it, people who were in the life sciences, like MDs and PhDs, they went into academia, and they thought that the best thing they could do was work on basic research as part of academia. They always looked at the life science companies as being turncoats, sellouts, people who are going for the buck. But the truth of it is, you do basic research at the universities, and then you really have to commercialize, a technology. And that commercialization is tough. It takes a lot of money. Yeah. It takes a lot of time. You have to do preclinical work, clinical work, commercialization efforts. And the truth of it is, anything, it takes a team. It takes a really diverse interest. I mean, you've got sales, marketing, research and development, quality, clinical trials, intellectual property, legal, business development, corp development, just a lot of stuff you have to handle, but I'm very fortunate to be in San Diego, because San Diego, is the home of Jonas Salk. Imagine Jonas Salk, in the 1950s, a lot of kids, I don't know if it was 1 in 10 or 1 in 20 or 1 in 30 or whatever, but kids were getting polio. Franklin D. Roosevelt, our ex-president, had polio, and you'd see these kids walking around with these metal braces on their legs and that. And imagine, what Jonas Salk did. He created a vaccine that really helped almost eradicate polio.
Yeah.
What a noble profession. So.
Yeah. No, it's crazy that the advancements and innovations in healthcare and life sciences can change people's lives so drastically too. And I guess, what is one of the challenges that you kind of see in life sciences and healthcare companies right now that a lot of them are kind of facing?
Sure. I went to a conference last night. I'm going to a conference today after this presentation. It's just money right now. It's money for grants. It's money for commercialization. It's money for clinical trials, money for commercialization. This costs money.
Yeah.
And, regulations have an effect too. If somebody makes it harder to get a patent, that's one issue. If somebody makes it harder to get a drug through, that's another issue. So a lot of factors here. The economy, COVID. It's amazing in the world, because when you have a crisis like COVID, where everybody is, all the life science companies pretty much pivoted to focus on COVID. So all of a sudden you had these cancer therapies and these other therapies that were just sitting there for a while, because we all had to focus on what was important. But as far as some problems in the industry, one of our problems, I think, is that we sometimes people chase the wrong things, right? Sometimes you have, it's sort of like if you go into a British grocery store versus an American grocery store. A British grocery store will have one type of cereal. An American grocery store will have 100 types of cereal.
Yeah.
And you think to yourself, why the hell do we need 100 types of cereal?
Yeah.
Right? There are these, these GLP-1s. I'm sorry, but there are these GLP-1s which are, reducing people's weight. And so the problem is now, once you get one company coming out with them, everybody has to have one. So it's sort of being like it's sort of like being in a Shanghai taxi station. A taxi comes in, everybody rushes this way. Taxi comes in this way, everybody rushes that way. So part of this is to focus on diseases, on certain diseases sometimes that may not affect many people.
Yeah.
That's why we have orphan clinical trials and the like, where we have these regulations that say, hey, look, we'll give you certain benefits to work on a disease that doesn't affect a lot of people.
Yeah.
So I guess overall summarizing that is, sometimes we follow the crowd.
Yeah.
Instead of following the need.
Yeah. No, I think that that's such a good point, honestly, too, because everything is important. You know, all of these diseases are affecting someone for sure, and we're all people. And so it's like you want to be able to focus on everything too,
Sure.
especially even to like maybe the diseases that aren't as common. Not as many people are studying it or trying to create solutions for these diseases, and so it is important because not all as many people are doing it.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah, no, that definitely makes sense. And so I guess right now, where do you see some of like kind of the most exciting opportunities in life sciences? I know we talked about some, and then obviously I know with venture capital you're also invested in some as well. So
Sure.
what kind of do you see as some of the most exciting opportunities there?
Sure. It's weird, as we're saying, some things grow hot and some things are cold at certain times. Like I was in a cardiovascular company for 5 years. Only in the last year did people say what I was working on was sexy. Like,
Yeah.
It's like 4 years, they're like, why are you in that part of the segment of the industry? Nobody's investing in that. And then all of a sudden it's like, wow, you're in that part of the industry. It's so sexy. And then somebody bought me.
Yeah.
So it's like, it just goes like that all the time. But,
Yeah.
I think as I mentioned, I had cancer in my early 30s. And so,
Yeah.
now I had a bit of recurrence of that. But just the treatment in cancer therapy is just so different. In the old days, it was cut it out, radiate it, or use chemotherapy. And now there's these autoimmune therapies where you take a drug and essentially it trains your immune system to fight the cancer by itself without having side effects. So the one thing is oncology, we're seeing less side effects, we're seeing more targeted therapies. We're finding that a bunch of cancers that were not curable years ago, seem like they're more curable now. So, for example, on the cancer side, my mother had cancer in the 1970s. She had non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, and they dosed her up. They gave her chemo, and all her hair fell out. She had to wear a wig. Now I think there's a company, I don't know if it's in San Diego or not, but there's a company that has like a cold pack treatment for somebody who gets chemotherapy, where they can put it on their heads and they don't lose their hair.
Wow.
So on oncology, we're seeing more of that. A big area that I'm seeing right now is neurology. Getting a drug through the brain to the blood-brain barrier has always been a problem. And for VCs, it's Parkinson's and Alzheimer's and various types of neurological diseases have been graveyards for companies. I just get the sense the next 5-10 years we're going to have amazing discoveries. If you think about it, the brain is one of the last frontiers. The problem is with going to the brain are the side effects. You worry. You touch a part of the brain and something bad happens. But I also think on the orphan disease side too. The truth is, I think we're all going to have orphan diseases. If you think about it, we all have a disease of one. All of our bodies are different. And I do think what's going to happen in the future is that we are going to zap these orphan diseases one by one. It takes a lot of time, it takes a lot of effort, but there's a lot of pain. A lot of people are going through a lot of pain out there right now, and so I do think we'll make a lot of strides. And then lastly, is this longevity issue.
Yeah.
I think one of our problems as human beings is we have two minds. It's like America. We're riding a bike and then we're going to the Cheesecake Factory. So it's like the cakes are too good and the friggin' and then you exercise. So, but part of this I think is what's the future? To me, the future is sobriety. The future is health.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, we do have two cultures. We've always had two cultures, rich and poor. The problems I think now with AI and everything else, I think the rich are going to get richer and more healthy, and the poor are going to get poorer and probably less healthy, unfortunately. And there's got to be something that we can do as humans to make sure that doesn't necessarily happen.
Yeah, that is such a good point too with AI. AI is changing kind of the landscape of a lot of different things, and I haven't even thought about it really like that necessarily, but it makes sense. Yeah, because people are going to continue to use AI, and then people who are in more entry-level or mid-level jobs even will potentially lose their jobs with AI, and then other people will continue to make more money. So it's like we almost have to figure out a way to get around that? Like, what are we going to do for these more maybe vulnerable people in society?
Well, that's right. And let me just mention another area that not a lot of people talk about. When I was a kid, if you were poor, you had bad teeth, and a lot of people had a lot of teeth missing, or the older people had no teeth. I mean, seriously, people don't think about it now. Almost every, most of the kids I know now, I don't know many, but a lot of them have braces, and people have better teeth. My wife is from Great Britain, and in her generation, people just didn't have great teeth. You either had great teeth or they were crooked.
Yeah, you
just. But now you look at British kids now, and they all have great teeth. So if you look at Chinese people in the old days, Chinese people in their 50s and 60s have bad teeth. But today, that's one thing they do invest in. So part of this, I think, is it's good to talk to people who have silver hair, because a lot of us have been around the block, and a lot of us can tell you what it was like, years ago compared to now. The good thing is we have been making a lot of progress. In some areas, it's been a bit slower.
Yeah.
And like I said, in some areas, the human condition, it's like, we're creating new problems. It's like with marijuana laws and everything else. I mean, people are saying, well, let's legalize marijuana. It's interesting. When I was a kid, everybody, all your parents smoked. I mean, your house was like filled with smoke. My parents smoked 2 packs a day. You go into a restaurant, everybody's smoking. If you watch like old movies, they're smoking on the set.
Yeah, or in airplanes.
In airplanes, they're smoking. You had non-smoking in airplanes in the back, like a row in the back of non-smoking.
Yeah.
But if you think about it, we made such progress with that. I mean, and not a lot of, I would say not a lot of smart people smoke, but we've made a lot of progress there. But then you get marijuana. Well, people don't realize this is not your grandmother's marijuana from the 60s. This is pharmaceutical grade marijuana that has some problems. So I wish as people would get a bit smart,
Yeah.
But anyway.
No, I mean, I totally get it. Yeah, it is. It's funny, like, what we're bringing in, but then it's also, like, the same people that are doing things maybe that are harmful for your body are also trying to combat it with other things, like the metaphor that you used of, like, riding your bike to the Cheesecake Factory, Like, that puts it into perspective for sure. And so kind of going over to another note a little bit, with Mesa Verde Partners, what kind of stuff are you all doing right now, and what does that kind of look like for you?
Sure. So we're operating out of our 4th fund right now. So we have smaller funds between 15 and 25 million. We typically invest between 500,000 to $1 million into every company, and then we, right up front, and then we put another $1 million into the company. We started off being oncology and medical devices and diagnostics, and then we've really, changed our portfolio a bit. A lot of people in VC will say, do you invest in the horse or the jockey? And I think we definitely invest in the jockeys.
Yeah.
So we have a lot of repeat investments. But, as we mature in our funds, we sort of like what we like. We have a couple oncology companies. We have one company that is a pain company. We never thought we'd be into pain, but somebody brought us a device that just worked, and that there was the device is actually in a bunch of VAs right now.
Awesome.
We have one entrepreneur who used to be with a serious dermatology company, and he then said to us one day, he said, hey, I want to go and I want to create beauty products. I want to create scientifically based beauty products. And he created a company called Elastin. And that company was sold for, I think it's $450 million.
I was going to say, I've definitely heard of Elastin before.
Yeah. And if you go to to like any higher end derm people, you'll see Elastin's products there. That guy came to us a couple of years ago and said, hey, I have another company called Glow Pharma, GLO Pharma, and we said, sure, let's do it. So we also have a company called Persephone, and Persephone deals with the baby biome. So they did some serious scientific work saying that the baby biome isn't what it should be, and so what they're doing is adding ingredients to baby formula, and so they're working with companies like Nestle and the like. So overall, I guess we're seeing the concept of healthcare go beyond just traditional biotech and medical devices, but to really encompass sort of alternate healthcare also. And that's what I'm seeing in the market. I mean, if you imagine, in Southern California, it's one of the best places in the world for this alternate healthcare because we have the LA sort of muscle crowd and the healthy actors and actresses crowd. We have Orange County, which is a seat of medical device, and we have San Diego, which is a very, very good early biotech center.
Yeah. So it's like the perfect combination out there for putting together new things in life sciences because you have the people who are going to try it and then you have all the people working on the product.
Well, and if you think too, Southern California has traditionally been a place where people go when they want to relax or they want to do healthy things, and we can have health here, 12 months of the year. So, it's weird. It's like with the life science industry. The life science industry the modern life science industry was recreated in 1980, where you had an act called the Bayh-Dole Act, which was essentially an act that said all receivers of federal funding have to make sure that inventions and companies and products are created out of the federal government's money.
Yeah.
You secondly had something called the Chakrabarty decision by the Supreme Court, which said that various types of life forms can be patented if they have the hand of man. And then the third thing was you had regulatory reform, which really made it easier for a company to have a drug approved by the FDA. If you take that, that happened in 1980, and then if you take that plus what we have today in Southern California, it is the perfect, really truthfully is the perfect place to, where a lot of these inventions started.
Yeah, no, and that definitely makes sense when you have all of that. And so you mentioned to me on our first call kind of some health disparities between rural areas and places like Orange County. What kind of issues do you think kind of contribute to that?
Yeah, look, some is education, the type of food that is around now. If you go into some rural communities, used to be the best farms were in the rural communities, and now, with corporate farming and everything else, putting various types of ingredients in, the people in the rural communities, the food supply, is just not what it used to be. Thirdly, just healthcare. Telehealth has improved a lot with some of these disparities. But the problem is, I think every person has to have their own list of health providers, and your mental health, your cellular health, your cardio health, your muscle health, and everything else. The problem is, in some communities, you just don't have those. And then the problem is, in the U.S. in some rural areas or even inner city areas, you just don't have access. People don't have the type of health care benefits that people in Orange County, for example, have, or have access to some of the best health care.
Yeah, no, that totally makes sense. I completely agree with you. You're not going to get the same access to resources, really, whether that's food or whether that is actually medical providers as well, too.
Yeah.
There's just not as many people.
Yeah.
And last question, what advice would you give to anyone entering healthcare investing or even biotech or life sciences?
Yeah, it's interesting here because part of what we do is we raise money on trends. So part of this is getting on the wave. And part of it is getting on the wave at the early part of it. The problem is when you're trying to raise money, during COVID, people were saying, "Oh, we have a COVID indication." Then, during these GLP-1s with the weight loss, "Well, we have weight loss." The truth of it is, whenever you create an incentive, I'll say this: whoever has the money controls what the money goes to.
Yeah.
So from an investment standpoint, you have to always consider where the wave is, but you have to be ahead of the wave, not on the back end of the wave. And I think a lot about healthcare. When we used to have life science companies coming up, biotechs and pharma, they used to have a technology and they go, "Ooh, isn't this sexy technology? Shouldn't we, let's find a problem to solve." The big thing is now, I think the big change in my industry is people are saying, let's solve a problem and then let's go find the technologies to do it. And so there's more problem solving today, which I think is a good thing. We're asking a lot more, we're asking better questions today than the questions we're asking, for example, are who's going to pay for it? Is this going to have an incremental effect on health? What's the competition? Who's going to buy it? Who's going to buy the company and the like? So the big thing I think is it all comes down to health in healthcare. And the big thing I think is focusing on those technologies that can really be as curative as you can for an indication. Because I think more people are looking for that out there. Part of it is sometimes don't try to bite off a big thing, try to bite off a small chunk of something too.
Yeah.
But there's money to be made. The thing about venture capital is, here's the model. The model is you invest in 10 companies, you have 1 or 2 home runs, you have 1 or 2 failures, and then everything else is in the middle.
Yeah.
And the good thing about life sciences is you can go from 0 to $1 billion in revenue in a year, once a drug gets approved. So that's why people like it, because they see these big home runs. What they don't look for is they don't look at all those companies that are slogging through, that are trying to raise a couple $100,000 in that. But thank God for entrepreneurs. And who's an entrepreneur? An entrepreneur is somebody who says, you know what, I believe in something, I'm going to be positive no matter what it looks like. I'm going to go and I'm going to get this funded. And I've seen companies that have taken 9, 10, 12 years, and they keep going. Sometimes you got to know when to quit, right? But sometimes, but that's science. And if you think about like Thomas Edison and Alexander Graham Bell and all the scientists, I mean, science fails, but you got to keep going, and you got to keep improving your hypothesis, and eventually, you'll hit it. The good thing about our industry, though, when you hit it, you extend somebody's life, or you save somebody's life, and that's I'm just so happy I'm in this industry. I'm so happy I'm working, with people who have high professional, ethical values.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I think that's such great advice. And I would love for you to tell my audience what is the best way to find you online or find Mesa Verde Partners as well. Sure.
You can find me. I'm on LinkedIn under Randy Berholtz. Please go there. You can always email me. I think I have my contact information there. Mesa Verde. You can go to www.mesaverdevp for venturepartners.com. So mesaverdevp.com. If you have an interesting idea, you have an interesting company, please let us know. We're health wonks. We always want to talk about health and the like and how to improve it. So always look forward to it.
Awesome. Cool. I will also put that in the show notes too, the links to your LinkedIn and then also the website, so it's easy access for all the listeners. I really, really appreciate you coming on. Thank you so much.
Anytime, Taylor. All the best. Take care then.